I was hired to brand the school, and we didn't use the word brand. I was hired to do all the graphics that any graphics the school needed. And the main things had to do with something you could send out from each of the schools. But you're not interested in all the other schools, we just do the design school. So the poster that I designed in the school, it's a shrink wrap poster with 3 objects in it. And in many ways, it's very much about what I'm interested in, because there's a modernist trope that how a thing is made is part of what it's about. So the way that it's made is the way things were sold in the market. It was shrink wrapped. There's a board that you put the type on, the words on, then you put the object in, then you heat up. The board has holes in it. You heat up the plastic, and then it gets vacuum sucked to it, and so that plastic sticks to the board. And this was done 9 up. So a lot of people, I think, were doing very physical things, and I was actually pregnant at times, so that may have contributed to the physicality of it. And I've been always very interested in the way objects and buildings and the physical world is full of the meanings we put in it. So this plays into that as well. And actually a woman called me to ask me what the jack was, because she didn't know the game where you throw up these little pointed things and you have to pick up a certain number before the ball comes down. The printed circuit, at that time, printed circuits were much larger, so we chopped them up into little pieces, and that's how we got, I think we printed almost 50,000 or 75,000 of these things. And then the pine cone is about the natural world and how it's regenerative, and ecology is part of it. And the last line of that says, taste and style just aren't enough. And they've used that for another event they're using. They have a little footnote that says this comes from Sheila de Bretteville's project. But in fact, I think that was what I got into trouble when I went to Yale, because I never thought that taste and style was enough. I really think that that's also part of another project that was part of the design school. Corrigan and Blau had arranged for a special issue of Arts and Society, and they were too busy to do it. So they asked, could you just edit, design it, take it away, do it. But it had the same function as the posters. It was about bringing students in, and I went with my friend Marianne, who I just had lunch with. She's actually the self-appointed godmother of my son, to the Associated Press, and picked up pictures of what was happening in the United States during the 10 years that Calarts was being planned. And in order to help the students see that they're attached to the history of the world, not just to coming to design school. And then I also interspliced in that their application materials, so images that they sent in to apply, poems that they sent in, some articles and images of things that the people who were going to teach also did. And that all of that is all mixed up, and what makes them, there's no table of contents. Have you ever seen it? It's a corrugated cover. So you open it up, and the first thing is a TV screen image and a quote from a song. And what holds the thing together is that there are archetypal gestures. There's someone, giving you a high five. There's somebody who is saying stop. There's someone who has their fist in the air. There's just all of those, handshake kind of thing, all the things that are hand gestures that were in everything. So you see gestures and the hand all the way through it. You see sometimes there's one picture of Stokely Carmichael in front of Che Guevara that's in the same relationship as Ronald Reagan in front of a picture of himself. So there's some formally laid out images that repeat with different content in them. There's Altamont, there's hippiedom, there's all of that is in there. And then in the center, everyone, instead of a contents page, there's an index. And everyone is listed alphabetically, not by their title, not hierarchically, and on the pages where you find work of it. So, and nobody bothered me about this. It's just a total, subversion of what is the usual order. The only thing they made me take out was some image of Nixon. What I knew I wanted was to place the school in the context of the world. I wanted to integrate the teachers and the students. I had read Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and not that students are oppressed, but rather inside of his pedagogy is this idea that students bring a certain amount of experience and knowledge, you bring a different experience and knowledge. You meet on an equal plane. And I wanted that to happen visually inside the book. That I was conscious of, because I had just read it while I was in Italy, and I was really taken with that idea. And I was looking for ways to act it out, and I had never taught before either. At that point, I had not taught. So I was doing it through my work. And that's why I did some crazy things for the design school. It was actually for the whole school. I mean, like the letterhead for the school was a bunch of rubber stamps. You could choose whether you wanted Mickey Mouse or this line, or there was one for Californians of the Arts, and then you could check. Well, it was like terrible for the secretaries, because who wants to, you want to put the piece of paper in your typewriter and type. You don't want to, all right, now I have to pick out which of the, but I was so, this kind of making choices, everybody could have choices, and it wasn't dictated by, it wasn't a blatantly didactic, dictated thing. And I think the language actually in that poster was written by Richard Farson, who was the head of the design school when I came, and I found it too didactic, but I liked the last line. And at that point, I didn't even catch that it was he, that there was a pronoun that was gender specific. I didn't catch. So I was much more focused on how it was made and getting it made, and then how to ship it out when it was a three-dimensional poster in these jiffy bags that had a little padding in there so you didn't squish the acorn. But, so at any rate, the design school, the thing that I think what might be useful for students, not only in terms of the made thing, of how much you learn when people don't tell you a lot of what to do. When they say, go do it, get it done, go away, take it out of my hand. It's a really wonderful opportunity. And I think from that experience, when I look back on it, I think comes this idea of, instead of assigning projects, is giving prompts. Something that just prompts an activity, rather than something which tells people, frames it too much, so that they're like too narrow a corral to go down for the horse to really run.
Right.
So,
Aspen Design Project.
well, the Aspen Design Project has very much the same point of view as Arts and Society, in that, but again, why I thought I was doing it and what I was doing, there's a kind of gap in there. I had a small child by then, and I was giving a talk there, and they wanted me to put out a publication, and I thought I'm going to have to interview people, tape it, transcribe it. It's going to take 6 months to do it. No, I'm not doing this. So I came up with that structure. So it's a different structure, but it does the same kind of thing. That there's on the thing that was handed out, showed what the newspaper would look like, all the little pieces that each page was made of. People got those pieces and could do anything they wanted on it, and then they got it back by the end of the week. But one of the problems in my work that I've had to undo over the time is that I couldn't fit all that I got back, because I only had a certain number of pages. The newspaper was a special edition of the Aspen Time, so I had to get a clothesline and hang up all the ones that I didn't use. And that helped, because I want to be infinitely inclusive. And you can't when you only have a certain. It's the same thing with like admissions. I hate admissions because I can only take 10 people, and then for this 2-year program, and only 6 for the other one, 16 in all. And I hate it. I hate rejecting people, because I try to get them to let me just throw darts. Then it would be arbitrary, because it is arbitrary. The people who don't get in are just as good as people who don't. You really don't know what people are going to become given this opportunity. You simply don't know.
Can you tell me a little bit about the genesis of the Women's Design Program at Calarts?
Let's see. At first, I should tell you before it, because actually we were at Villa Cabrini. The design school was at Villa Cabrini, because there's some other things about the design school that are interesting about that first period, because we weren't in the building in Valencia. And I asked a student who was with me at Yale to give me all the the assignments because I never kept them. I knew he did that. He sent them all to me, and I said, I wouldn't give any of these out. So I was trying to invent projects that would, again, reveal the person who was making the project, but I didn't really know what this project would be. So I can tell you all the mistakes I made also in the process of learning. That was my first teaching job. And I also taught a co-taught class, Sheila de Bretteville, who was a social, political scientist. And I asked them to talk about the object as a physical thing. So that if someone had brought in this cup, they'd have to talk about it being made of china, that is the kind that you put pictures of your grandchildren in and they tell you that you love. But what turned out to be was that everyone, in the discussion of what they brought, was talking about themselves, and I saw that, and I freaked out. I didn't say anything, I just left it. What I did was to show them that you could look at an object in terms of its materials and how it was put together. But what I saw was something entirely different, and it was very powerful, and actually I was driving home and I had to pull over on the freeway and cry. I was just so filled up with the perception, but not the knowledge of what to do with it. And I'm not somebody who mucks around with someone else's interiority. That's not my professional thing. So I didn't do that. That's something I do now differently, and I did it differently at the Women's Building, but it started at Calarts as a way of how you understand the investment that's placed in the physical world. And then we moved to Valencia. In between that time, I was asked to do a special issue of Every Woman, which is a newspaper, and I laid that one out as if it was a conscious-raising group where each woman got the same amount of space, no matter whether she was a teacher or a student in the program. They got a picture of themselves and a picture of one of their work. And then I figured out the type by the longest text I got, that's fit, and then everything else I could drape around and juggle the stuff. And then the center spread was a cheer that they did up in Fresno in Judy Chicago's class, which is really interesting on a different level, where they went dressed up as cheerleaders and give me a C, give me a U, give me an N, give me a T. So I made that the center spread. Of course, even when I got the Design Legend Award, that's the spread they show, which is so much not my tone, but it was so obvious to put it as the center spread. How could I not do that? And it was, after all, about a program that Judy ran. So I knew about that program, and Judy came to Calarts, and I started to think, what would I do? So I went to, by that time, Dick Farson had left, and Victor Papanek had become the dean, and I was very much against Victor Papanek. As Javon Tabbibi, unfortunately he's no longer alive, would tell you, because I was like, I didn't want, because the person and the work, he did a very good book on, designing for the third world, but the person himself was not anything like that. And so I went to him and said, I was the only woman teaching, but I said I'd like to have my 2 days, I would just be with women, and I'd work with them, and I'd figure we'd find out what it means to be a woman in terms of design, because I don't have an agenda other than figuring it out together. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, then what's going to happen to all the boys? I said, they won't have you as a teacher. I said, well, hire somebody else. Always that option. He said, and then he made this terrible comment, and it's just like, it's like a ghetto. That, it's like the Jews in Europe who, make yourself, prepare yourself to be murdered. I said, are you kidding? And it's just, he couldn't have picked a worse metaphor for what this is. So at any rate, they let me do it. Maybe that's what Craig is alluding to, because I said, this is what I want to do, because I need to know. And my exchanges, I will teach them about design, and together we'll figure this out together. So we had some of the assignments were things that were like what I did at Yale, and certainly like what Dan Friedman was doing, because he had an article in Typographic that was about, he gave out a weather project. People had a certain format, and they used the type of the weather, what the temperature, etc., and then you could do a visual with it. And when I had that at Yale, I was given an Alfred White Northhead quote about style, and I had to lay it out, you know. And so you lay it out different ways, and so you learn about flush left, flush right, you know, centered, dispersed, all kinds of things. So you learn about typography, you know, alignments, and the students. But I had the students choose their own. I figured out how many words. Said, all right, within 30 words, pick any piece of text you want. And that's where I learned that, like, a student picked The Rape of Tralala in Last Exit to Brooklyn, and she could play with the alignments, like align all the verbs, or align all the ands, or align all the, you know, parts, and do different games with the type. But when it came to interpretation, the meaning of the text was just too powerful for her, and too powerful for the kind of experience she was having from the words to make an image, because she didn't have the skills yet to make those images. So, and also because it was too much. And so I misunderstood, you know, that a cool topic makes it easier to do analytical work. A hot topic is easier for more expressive work, but you need some skills in doing that expression. And at that point, I realized that maybe having such a hot topic is not such a good thing, but you don't want to tell a student not to have a hot topic. So, but it did point out a flaw in that choice. And then, so I was making up the assignments, and then we had one time where we just had we had a reading list, and we read books, and we discussed the ideas in the books. That was one morning, one half of one day. Then we had what was basically a sort of, not really a conscious rating session, but any kind of thing that was bothering anybody, they could talk about, or they liked. So it was just discussion of what was going on in the class. And then there were these assignments that I gave. So I had given money to, I remember now exactly the amount, $55,000 to buy all the equipment for the graphics lab. And so I bought a rotoprint offset press, because Ann Williams was coming and she knew how to run it, because no point having any equipment that somebody doesn't know how to run. And a Vandercook letterpress, because that's pretty easy to run. It's very simple. You're rolling the thing over. You just don't want to put something down there that you don't want it to roll over. And you know, all the photo equipment that we needed. And so but among the things I bought was a Diatronic, which was a typesetting machine of that particular period, where you could type the letter. You can pick the typeface you wanted from the roster of choices, and you could type, but you couldn't see it. So when you developed, it was a photographic process. So when you developed the paper, that's when you see your mistake, and so you still have to splice it apart and screw around with it, because you couldn't see it while you were doing it. It was just an early version of a photographic method of typesetting. And but the women did that. That's how they did the type, was on that Diatronic. And that's where Suzanne Lacey did the Rape Is book. And then in that class, I thought we should do something that's, again, for the outside world. And so I was thinking about the way in which women find out about menstruation. And I gathered all the materials that are given out in the schools. They look like they were had ads for Halo shampoo. They were like vehicles that for consumerist vehicles, and looked like Disney had designed them. So I brought in all that print material, and we talked about what we would do that was different, and we really weren't getting anywhere. I said, there's something not right here. And so I brought in my friend Jane, who's a psychologist. And I said, Jane, why don't you come and listen to our discussion and see what you hear? And somehow it made it be clear that we didn't know what we wanted to say about menstruation. Really didn't know what we wanted to say, and it wasn't what was in the book, that's for sure. And so I said, well, if we don't know, it's always better to ask. So we made groups of 11 to 12-year-olds, boys and girls, who we videotaped. One of the women had some experience with videotaping, so we did that because Calarts had a video lab. And then we did a group of men and women who were in their 20s, teachers and students. And then we did a group of older women. So those videotapes are, in a way, they're another version of a way of the Aspen paper, where you just let people say what they say, and then you begin to understand. And also you demystify the subject, because they are a participant in how it's understood and how it's represented. So it worked, and actually they chose the one of the 11 and 12-year-olds because that's the most charming. Because they start talking about birds and how many holes a bird has. You know, we were there going, menstruation. You know, trying to get back on topic. But you know, it's really charming when boys and girls of that age are talking about sexuality in the way that they can about a topic that only some of them have experienced. You know, it's really, but it has all that wonder and thought and questioning that, you know, people can identify with. I think that there's just something about it that's attractive to me about what happens when you don't tell people what to do, but you give them a framework in which they can do it. And sometimes you need more framework, like this young man said, please tell me whether it should be a book or a video. I said, I appreciate, you know, you've only been here a week and a half, and that you really want things easier. You can't find a Mexican restaurant anywhere in New Haven. I can see why you're having trouble. But no, I can't tell you. It's about you not needing to know yet what it's going to be. It's just hard. I know it's hard on you, but you chose to come here. It was not a secret that we do this. So, anyway.
Were there any, I mean, in terms of thinking about design in this more open way, were there ever any obstacles in terms of the design community at large or at Calarts in implementing this?
Not at Calarts, except for that one not from Richard Farson, because he was interested in feminism even before I was, and they even called him the chrome-plated marshmallow because he was totally a good person inside, sweet person inside. He's just very slick on the outside. But Victor Papanek was really upsetting to me because here's someone who does a book that looks like it's about, talk about dirty, all those things in there are making do with what you have, not creating more things. And we were sensitive at that time already that, you know, a lot of graphic design is landfill, so we don't want to contribute to landfill. But I don't think anyone at Calarts caused that problem. I was already wanting to leave. I wasn't feeling the way Judy and Arlene felt. They wanted to have me to do a poster where they were throwing dominant cultures, institutions into the garbage pail. I said, well, I'm not doing that poster. I'm looking for something that's going forward to something, not that's against something. Can't you just, instead of being against, couldn't we just do something that provides an idea of what the alternative might be? But actually, I did learn something else at Calarts. It was when I was there another year after we already had done the Feminist Studio workshop brochure to send out. I stayed another year, and in that time they came out with these femme sprays, and I did this sticker that said, your vagina smells fine just the way it is, naturally, which is not like me to usually do, but I did. And also the company here, Label House, you can't get like 20 of these. You had to get 500 of these. So I had like an inordinate amount of these stickers. So I gave them out to students to put up on these things, and one of them got apprehended by the police. And that's how I learned that you can't do things in the public sphere that they don't want. You have to negotiate with them to do these things. Not that thing wouldn't, but those kinds of political acts have to be done at night or in other places where nobody catches you. Then also schools become vulnerable because they're deep pockets. So by the time I got to Yale, when students wanted to do those kinds of things, I said, I tacitly give you approval, but I can't facilitate it. It's not the school, it has to be from you. Because the school can't bear. You can't do something which is illegal as a school because you have deep pockets. If you want to do something illegal, that's your right. I will help you, but as a person separate from the school. So I learned that. I learned that in my days at Calarts, but the hard way because I really felt bad for the woman. I mean, to have the police stop you is scary, and but we got her off. That part's good. That the physical environment is as meaningful as people in a way. It's part of who they are. And certainly the artists of Los Angeles and the designers of Los Angeles talk about the impact of this landscape on their work. It has an effect on it. Maybe that's even true for me, in that I was in such a foreign place for me. I never wanted to drive, and I didn't like driving. I still don't like driving. Everything was really, really foreign, much more foreign than Europe was. And people ask me, what's LA like? And I had a window that looked out on MacArthur Park. I said, well, there's a woman who walks around. She's purchased a shopping cart with all her stuff, just like in New York, and she's got all the hair she's taken out of her brush and made a whole thing that hangs down. But it's all different colors, purple and green and yellow and orange. And then there are palm trees. There are no palm trees anywhere I've been before. And that way it's not the same. So I think that the not the same is helpful.
Well, Sheila, it's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Yeah, good luck with this.
I guess, yeah, on a final note, we're thinking about ways of presenting this research, and one of the ideas that we have is to present it in the form of a slideshow/video, where there's going to be a separate audio and video track. One video track is going to be the research materials, and then the audio track is going to be bits from the interviews that we've done. And last night I was thinking about, your Art and Society publication and the way that the structure functions, and I was thinking, this can be a kind of homage to that, the way that this works, and that how the viewer
makes their own understanding.
Exactly. So I was thinking maybe we can call it Prologue to a Prologue, or Prologue to a Future Community, or something like that.
I like Prologue to a Future Community. I think that Prologue to a Future. I vote for Prologue to a Future Community.